All right. So what can we put in this blank so that we can have a trinomial that will be equivalent to, obviously this will be x, plus something squared. In other words, what would make this trinomial a perfect square or a square binomial? Josie? 100. And how did you get 100? Okay, so 10 times 10 is 100. 10 plus 10 is 20. Well, is there a way to get that 100, or this 100, from what we have here? And the answer is yes. If I take this linear term, if I take the coefficient for the linear term, which is 20, I'm going to divide it by 2. Because if I break something in half and then add the two halves together, I get that original number, right? So if I divide that by 2, this is going to be 10. And I think everyone here is going to agree that 10 plus 10 is 20. Okay. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to square 100. And what do I get when I square, sorry, what do I get when I square 10? 100. I get 100. And so if that blank had a 100, this trinomial could be factored as the quantity x plus 10 squared. If you get if you understand the idea of dividing the linear term by 2 and then squaring, you got completing the square. That's really all that it is. That's all we're going to do today. So on this problem here, we have 11. What are we going to do so that we could have a binomial squared? What could go into this blank that would give us that square? Now this is going to be a little more complicated because we have an odd number as our constant coefficient. So what are we going to do with this 11?
Divide by 2.
So we have 11 divided by 2. You're going to be better off leaving things as improper fractions as opposed to decimals. So we're going to keep that 11 over 2 as 11 over 2. What are we going to now do to the linear term divided by 2 to figure out what's going to go in this blank right here? Sarah? So we're going to square it, and so we get 121 over 4. So what's going to go here? 121 divided by 4. My goodness. And we're going to keep that as an improper fraction. And just to prove this works, what's going to be in my binomial here? What's going to go in my binomial? What's going to be my first term? So we're going to have x here because x times x is x squared. What times itself is 121 over 4? 11 over 2. Now we all agree right now that 11 over 2 times 11 over 2 is 121 over 4. But we also need to make sure that 11 over 2 is plus 11 over 2 is equal to 11. So what is 11 over 2 plus 11 over 2? We get 22 over 2. What 22 over 2 is equal to?
11.
Oh my goodness, it works, doesn't it? Yeah. So we have completed the square. X squared plus 11x plus 121 over 4 is equal to the binomial x plus 11 over 2 squared. How does this help us? Probably not at all, you're thinking. But no, we can solve problems, quadratic problems, with this method. Now, before we get started, the first trinomial is not prime. In other words, you can factor it to solve the problem. So we're going to factor it to solve the problem. Then we're going to redo the problem, completing the square, and we're going to prove that it works. Okay? So what times what is equal to positive 23, but when you add it together, you get negative 24.
Negative 23 and negative 1.
So we have y minus 23, y minus 1 equals 0. So what is the solution here?
Y equals 23, y.
So we have 23 and 1. We know that's the answer. I'm not going to worry about knowing the answer. We've got it. I'm just going to save it up here. And we're going to complete the square. And we're going to get the same answer. So I don't think anyone's going to be surprised when I say that 23 is not a perfect square. It's prime. We can't do much with that. So what I'm going to do is I need to have that blank, just like in our previous problems, right? So what can I do to both sides so that I get a blank instead of plus 23?
Maybe subtract 23.
Let's subtract 23. So I'm going to subtract 23 from both sides. So over here I still have y squared minus 24y plus my blank is equal to negative 23. So what am I going to do to the linear term so that I can figure out what I have to add to make this a square binomial? What am I going to do to that linear coefficient? I'm going to divide it by 2. The process does not change. So I'm going to take my 24. I'm going to divide by 2, and what do I get?
Negative 12.
Thank you, negative 24. And I get negative 12. What am I going to now do?
Square it.
I'm going to square it. And what is negative 12 squared? So I'm going to add 144 to this side, thus making it a square binomial. But if I add 144 to one side, what must I do to the other? So the rules of solving equations don't go away. They remain. So what is this trinomial as a square binomial? How would I go ahead and factor that? How would I factor this piece here?
Y minus 12 squared.
Y minus 12 squared. Oh, look. That came right there, didn't it? Okay. And that's going to equal
121.
121. So what am I going to now have to do to both sides to get the y extricated from that parentheses? I'll have to square root it. So I'm going to take, it's a great word. So what is the square root of the quantity y minus 12 squared?
Y minus 12
Equals plus or minus 11. So then we have our positive and negative worlds. I get y minus 12 is equal to positive 11. Y minus 12 is equal to negative 11. What will I do to get the y's by itself? I'm going to add 12 to both sides of everything. And so I get y is equal to 11 plus 12, which is 23. Over here we get y is equal to? Is that the same answer we got up here?
Yes.
Yeah, but took a lot more time.
So it works. We have solved this problem by completing the square.